Okay, this is part 20 of Champion. June, 1700 hours, Balta Hall, 68 degrees Fahrenheit. I hate Senate meetings. I hate them with a passion. Nothing but a sea of bickering politicians and talking heads, talking all the time when I could instead be out in the streets giving my mind and body a healthy workout. But after the plan that day Andon and I have concocted, there's no choice but to brief the Senate. Now I sit in the circular meeting chamber at Balta Hall, my seat facing Andon from across the room, trying to ignore the intimidating looks from the senators. Few events leave me feeling more like a child than Senate meetings. Andon addresses his restless audience. Attacks against our bases in Vegas have picked up since Denver fell, he says. We've seen African squadrons approaching the city. Tomorrow, I head out to meet my generals there. He hesitates here. I hold my breath. I know how much Andon hates the idea of voicing defeat to anyone, especially to the colonies. He looks at me, my cue to help him. He's so tired. We all are. Miss Ypres, he calls out, if you please, I hand the floor over to you to explain your story and your advice. I take a deep breath. Addressing the Senate, the one thing I hate more than attending Senate meetings, made even worse by the fact that I have to tell them a lie. By now, I'm sure you all have heard about Commander Jameson's supposed work for the colonies. Based on what we know, it seems likely that the colonies will hit Los Angeles with a surprise attack very soon. If they do, and the attacks on Vegas continue, we won't last for long. After talking with Day and the Patriots, we suggest that the only way to protect our civilians and to possibly negotiate a fair treaty is to announce our surrender to the colonies. Stunned silence. Then the room burst into chatter. Serge is the first to raise his voice and challenge Andon. With all due respect, Elector, he says, his voice quivering with irritation. You did not discuss this with your other princeps-elects. It was not something I had an opportunity to discuss with you before now, Andon replies. Ms. Ypres' knowledge comes only because she was unfortunate enough to experience it firsthand. Even Mariana, often at Andon's side, raises her voice against the idea. This is a dangerous negotiation, she says. At least she speaks calmly. If you are going to spare our lives, then I recommend you and Miss Ypres reconsider immediately. Handing the people to the colonies will not protect them. The other senators don't show the same restraint. A surrender? We have kept the colonies off our land for almost 100 years. Surely we're not that weakened yet. What have they done aside from temporarily winning Denver? Elector, this is something you should have discussed with all of us, even in the midst of this crisis. I look on as each voice rises higher than the next until the entire chamber fills with the sound of insults, anger, and disbelief. Some spew hatred over Day, some curse the colonies, some beg Andon to reconsider, to ask for more international help, to plead for the United Nations to stop stealing our ports. Noise. This is an outrage, one senator, thin, probably no more than 140 pounds, with a gleaming bald head, barks, looking at me as if I'm responsible for the entire country's downfall. Surely we're not taking direction from a little girl. And from Day? You must be joking. We'll hand the country over based on the advice of some damn boy who should be still on our nation's criminal list? Andon narrows his eyes. Careful how you refer to Day, Senator, before the people turn their backs on you. The senator sneers at Andon and raises himself up as high as he can. Elector, he says, his tone exaggerated and mocking. You are the leader of the Republic of America. You have power over this entire country. And here you are, held hostage to the suggestion of someone who tried to have you killed. My temper has begun to rise. I lower my head so that I don't have to look at the senator. In my opinion, sir, you need to do something before your entire government and your entire population sees you as nothing but a cowardly, weak-willed, backroom negotiating pushover, bowing to the demands of a teenage girl and a criminal and a ragtag team of terrorists. Your father would have. Andon jumps to his feet and slams his head down on the table. Instantly, the chamber turns silent. Senator, Andon says quietly. The man stares back, but with less conviction than he had 2 seconds ago. You are correct about only one thing. As my father's son, I am the elector of the Republic. I am the law. Everything I decide directly affects who lives or dies. I study Andon's face with a growing sense of worry. His gentle, soft voiced self is slowly disappearing behind the veil of darkness and violence inherited from his father. You do well to remember what happened to those senators who actually plotted my failed assassination. The chamber falls so quiet, I feel like I can hear the beads of sweat rolling down the senators' faces. Even Mariana and Serge have turned pale. In the midst of them all stands Andon, his face a mask of fury, his jaw tense, and his eyes a deep, brooding storm. He turns to me. I feel an awful electric shudder run through my body, but I keep my gaze steady. I am the only one in the chamber willing to look him in the eye. Even if our surrender is a fake one that the senators aren't meant to understand, I wonder how Andon will deal with this group once it's all over. Maybe he won't have to. Maybe we'll belong to a different country, or maybe Andon and I will both be dead. In this moment, sitting amongst a divided Senate and a young elector struggling to hold them together, I finally see my path clearly. I don't belong. I shouldn't be here. The realization hits me so hard I find it suddenly hard to breathe. Andon and the senators exchange a few more tense words, but then it's all over and we file out of the room in an uneasy crowd. I find Andon, his deep red uniform a bright marker against the senator's black, in the hall and pull him aside. "They'll come around," I say, trying to offer reassurance in a sea of hostility. "They don't have a choice." He seems to relax, if only for a second. A few simple words from me are enough to dissipate his anger. "I know, but I don't want them to have no choice. I want them solidly behind me of their own will." He sighs. "Can we speak in private? I've something to discuss with you." I study his face, trying to guess at what he wants to say, dreading it. Finally, I nod. "My apartment's closer." We head out to his Jeep and drive in silence, all the way to my high-rise in Ruby Sector. There, we make our way upstairs and enter my apartment without a word. Ollie greets us, as enthusiastic as ever. I close the door behind me. Andon's temper has long vanished. He looks around with a restless expression, then turns back to me. "Do you mind if I sit?" "Please," I reply, taking a seat myself at the dining table. The elector primo, asking for permission to sit. Andon takes a seat beside me with all of his signature grace and then rubs his temples with weary hands. "I have some good news," he says. He tries to smile, but I can see how heavy it is. "I've made a deal with Antarctica." I swallow hard. "And?" "They've confirmed that they will send military support, some air support for now, more ground support when we prove we've found a cure." Andon replies, "And they will agree to treat Day." He doesn't look at me. "In exchange for Dakota. I have no choice. I'm giving them our largest territory." My heart jumps with an overwhelming sense of joy and relief, and at the same time it sinks with sympathy for Andon. He's been forced to fragment the country, giving up our most precious resource, everybody in the world's most precious resource. It was inevitable. Every win comes with a sacrifice. "Thank you," I say. "Don't thank me yet." His wry smile quickly turns into a grimace. "We are hanging by a thread. I don't know if their help will come fast enough. The word from the warfront is that we're losing ground in Vegas. If our plans with this phony surrender fail, if we don't find a cure soon, this war will be over before Antarctica's support ever arrives." "Do you think finding a cure will make the colonies stop?" I ask quietly. Andon shakes his head. "We don't have many options," he replies, "but we have to hang on until help arrives." He falls silent for a moment. "I head to the warfront in Vegas tomorrow. Our troops need it." Right into the thick of war. I try to stay calm. "Are your Princeps Selects going too?" I ask. "Your senators?" "Only my generals will join me," Andon replies. "You're not going to come, and neither are Mariana and Serge. Someone needs to hold firm in Los Angeles." And here's the meat of what he wants to tell me. My mind spins over what I know he'll say next. Andon leans on the table and threads his gloved fingers together. "Someone needs to hold firm in Los Angeles," he repeats, "which means one of my Princeps Elects will need to take my place as an acting elector. She will need to control the Senate, keep them in check while I'm away with the troops. I would select this person, of course, and the Senate would confirm it." A small, sad smile plays at the edges of his lips, as if he already knows what my answer will be. "I've already spoken individually with Mariana and Serge about this, and they are both eager for my appointment. Now I need to know whether you are as well." I turn my head away and look out the apartment window. The thought of becoming an acting elector of the Republic, even though my chances of being chosen pale in comparison to that of Mariana and Serge, should excite me, but it doesn't. Andon watches me carefully. "You can tell me," he finally says. "I realize what a turning point this decision is, and I've sensed your discomfort for quite some time." He gives me a level stare. "Tell me the truth, June. Do you really want to be a Princeps Elect?" I feel a strange emptiness. I had been contemplating this for a long time. My disinterest and weariness with the politics of the Republic, the bickering in the Senate, the fighting among senators and the Princeps Elects. I'd thought this would be hard to say to him, but now that he's here, waiting for my answer, the words come easily, calmly. "Andon, you know that the role of a Princeps Elect has been a huge honor for me, but as time goes on I can tell that something's missing, and now I know what it is. You need to head off and lead your army against our enemies, while Day and the Patriots are fighting back against the colonies in their own guerrilla way. I miss being out in the field, working as a junior agent and relying on myself. I miss the days when things were straightforward instead of political, when I could easily sense the right path and what I should do. miss doing what my brother helped train me to do. I hold my gaze steady. I'm sorry, Andon, but I don't know whether I'm cut out to be a politician. I'm a soldier. I don't know who should consider me. I don't think you should consider me a temporary elector in your absence, and I'm not sure whether I should continue on as your princeps-elect. Andon searches my eyes. I see, he finally says. Although there's a twinge of sadness in his voice, he seems to agree. If there's one thing Andon excels at, even more than Day, it's understanding where I'm coming from. A moment later, I see another emotion in his eyes. Envy. He's envious that I have the choice to step away from the world of politics, that I can turn to something else, when Andon will forever and always be our elector, someone the country needs to lean on. He can never step away with a clean conscience. He clears his throat. What do you want to do? I want to join the troops in the streets, I reply. I'm so sure of my decision this time I'm excited by the prospect that I can hardly bear it. Send me back out there. Let me fight. I lower my voice. If we lose, then none of the princeps-elects will matter anyway. Of course, Andon says, nodding. He looks around the room with an uncertain expression, and behind his brave front I can see the boy king in him struggling to hold on. Then he notices a rumpled coat hanging at the foot of my bed. He lingers on it. I'd never bothered to put Day's coat away. Andon finally looks away from it. I don't need to tell him that Day had spent the night. I can already see the realization on his face. I blush. I have always been good at hiding my emotions, but this time I'm embarrassed at something about that night. The heat of Day's skin against mine, the touch of his hand smoothing my hair away from my face, the brush of his lips against my neck, will show up in my eyes. Well, he says after a long pause. He gives me a small, sad smile, then rises. You are a soldier, Miss Icarus, through and through, but it has been an honor to see you as a princeps-elect. The elector of the Republic vows to me. Whatever happens from here, I hope you remember that. Andon, I whisper. The memory of his dark, furious face in the Senate chamber comes back to me. When you're in Vegas, promise me you'll stay yourself. Don't turn into someone you're not, okay? He may not have been surprised by my answer or by Day's coat, but this seems to catch him off guard. He blinks, confused for a second. Then he understands. He shakes his head. I have to go. I have to lead my men, just like my father did. That's not what I mean, I say carefully. He struggles for a moment to find the next words. It's no secret how cruel my father was, or how many atrocities he committed, the trials, the plagues. Andon trails off a little, the light in his green eyes turning distant as he dwells on memories of someone few of us had ever come to know. But he fought with his men. You understand this, perhaps more than anyone. He didn't hang back in a Senate chamber while he sent his troops off to die. When he was young and brought the country from a lawless mess to strict martial law, he was out in the streets and in front of his squadrons. He fought at the warfront itself, shooting down colonies' jets. Andon pauses to give a quick look. I'm not trying to defend anything he did, but if he was anything, he was unafraid. He won his military's loyalty through action, however ruthless. I want to boost our troops' morale too, and I can't do it while hiding out in LA. You are not your father, I say, holding his gaze with my own. You're Andon. You don't have to follow in his footsteps. You have your own. You're the elector now. You don't have to be like him. I think back on my own loyalty to the former elector, of all the video footage of him shouting orders from the cockpit of a fighter jet or heading up tanks in the streets. He was always on the front lines. He was fearless. Now I look at Andon, I can see the same fearlessness burning steadily in his eyes, his need to assert himself as a worthy leader of his country. When his father was young, perhaps he had also been like Andon, idealistic, full of hopes and dreams, of the noblest intentions, brave and driven. How had he slowly twisted into the elector who created such a dark nation? What path had he chosen to follow? Suddenly, for however brief a second, I feel like I understand the former republic, and I know that Andon won't go down that same road. Andon returns my look as if hearing my unspoken words, and for the first time in months I see some of the dark cloud lift from his eyes, the blackness that gives birth to his moments of furious temper. Without his father's shadow in the way, he's beautiful. I'll do my best, he whispers.